Hey guys, yeah, I'm recording this. I got a half hour before I start work here on the 20th of June 2022. But you'll be watching this, believe it or not, on the 29th of June. That's right. This is, of course, one of the videos that I am recording and will be setting up for premiere a week from this Wednesday. Now, as far as the topic of this video goes, this, of course, is a video you'll see after Forbidden Door is done and over with. And by the time it's done and over with, we will pretty much know who the interim AEW champion is. As well as we'll probably find out who the new unified, or basically two double champions of, Ring of Honor and, IWGP are, if they plan to do what I think they're planning to do. We'll know who the IWGP US champion is if they're going to do that match, which we think they could do. But mostly, we will know by the time you watch this, who the first ever AEW All-Atlantic champion is. We'll know all this, including who the new AEW Women's champion is between Toni Storm and Thunder Rosa, and much more. But the reason I bring up the second to last championship there, which is the AEW All-Atlantic Championship, is mainly for the fact that a lot of folks, even though they try to find justification in it, some people do question whether or not AEW has too many titles that they should cut back. I mean, with the fact that they have the Ring of Honor championships, in the possession from the World, the Pure, the TV, the Tag, and even the women's title, combine those, along with the AEW World, the TNT, the Tag, the Women's Championship, the Women's TBS Championship, and now the All-Atlantic. Some people might say that, AEW has way too much. But then again, people could say the same about WWE, and many will counter that by saying that if anybody should shorten all their titles, to just, certain ones because of their roster, it should be WWE. But that's up to WWE to do if they ever decide to do it. But when it comes to AEW, a lot of people will say that AEW is, kind of justified. They're kind of justified in having these many championships. I mean, again, you have Ring of Honor World, Ring of Honor Pure, Television, Tag, Women's. That's 5 titles representing one company Tony Khan owns. And then along with it, you have from AEW, the World, the TNT, the Tag, the Women's, the Women's TBS, and now the Atlantic. That's 11. That's 6 titles, and basically it's 11 combined. And some people might say that's way too much, and maybe it is. But if Ring of Honor is starting to kind of, rebuild its foundation under Tony, starting next month with Death Before Dishonor, then honestly, I can say, sorry about that, but honestly, I can say that maybe the justification is indeed justified. Because, like I said, Ring of Honor is starting to kind of find its footing, then I don't think anybody has anything to really worry about. I mean, when you really think about it, even though some of the Ring of Honor championships have been defended on Dynamite, they have been defended on Rampage and such, even though they've been defended in those capacities, lately a lot of them have also seen defenses on Dark and Dark Elevation, which kind of tells me what's going to happen, eventually is basically Tony Khan might turn one of those shows, Dark or Dark Elevation, into his Ring of Honor show. That's what I think is going to happen, that he will basically turn one of those into his Ring of Honor show. Whether it's the show in Universal Studios, which is Dark, or it's Dark Elevation, which happens before AEW Dynamite and Rampage. You know, I could see him doing that. I could see him using one of those shows and turning it into the Ring of Honor show. And the catch that would, keep them in the clear is it would be on YouTube. It wouldn't be on TBS. It wouldn't be on TNT. It'd be on YouTube. And it would be for free. And by being for free, it pretty much reaches more outlets and everything. It reaches more outlets, more homes. People can watch it at any time they want, like they can kind of do with NWA Power and such. So they have the opportunity to do that. And on occasions, you could use, the platform they would have on YouTube to build up to not only the pay-per-views under the Ring of Honor name, but also build up to potential big Ring of Honor matches that you might showcase on occasions on Dynamite or Rampage. So, so when, you look at the fact that Death Before Dishonor is next month, and the potential that this is where they're heading with Ring of Honor, then the justification of having this many championships under one roof, or one shared roof, like I said, I think is indeed justified. I think honestly, there is a big enough roster, and this is one thing people have pointed out to justify the reasoning for all these titles. They have a big enough roster to, basically share the wealth, if you catch my drift. They have a big enough roster to share the wealth. Now, I do get that some fans may understand that, but I'll put it this way, the more hardcore old school, if you know what I'm saying. And what I mean by that is they love the wrestling. AEW is places like AEW, Impact, MLW, New Japan, it's their fix. No doubt about it. A lot of them consider those promotions way better than WWE, and you can't blame them at times. But when I talk about old school hardcore, I'm talking about the fact that even though those promotions might be their jam, they also feel that promotions like them should only have certain main championships. Like you should have a world title, a secondary championship like an Intercontinental title or a U.S. title. You should have a tag title and a women's title. You should have at least world, secondary, tag, women's, that's it. Those should be your 4 primary belts. And if you have talent in there that probably realistically wouldn't be able to compete for, let's say, the world or even the secondary title, again, the tag title is a good one. But, if you have the justification to add a cruiserweight, junior heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight division, if you have the justification roster-wise to do that, then there you go. If you have the justification to be like, well, we're on television a lot, and there are some talents we need to get over with exposure, then yeah, you have justification for that. And AEW kind of checks off a lot of those boxes of being justified, in having all these titles between both AEW and ROH. They are justified because of the massive roster they have. So, I don't see anything wrong with it. The All-Atlantic title, like I said, I like the fact that it's kind of in name, kind of like a tribute to the Mid-Atlantic title. But I also like the fact that it's a championship that I look at the fact that it can be defended outside of AEW. Yes, it's got the AEW branding, but if you're making it about international superstars, international competitors, wrestlers that people know of or don't know of, that, don't get opportunities, as much as they should, then having a crack on their home turf at the All-Atlantic title, depending on who has it, is a great way of going with it, a great way of going in that direction. Now, I know some people feel that, again, that are those old school hardcore fans that look at these promotions as their jam, but feel that they would be a lot better if they lessened the whole championship belt, collecting or introductions and all that, to just, a certain amount. And I get that. I do understand that. I get it. I understand that and everything. I know that they also kind of worry that with these many titles under one shared roof, that some of the championships may not get, a lot of attention. And because they don't get a lot of attention, those championships might as well possibly, if not will be, defunct, vacated, shelved indefinitely. And I see the worry there. It's like you have all these titles, but yet you don't know what to do with most of them, and there's a good chance most of them could end up, being shelved. And that's an honest and that is a justified reason to kind of say, hey, maybe you should limit your championships that you have under your roof, under your possession, or in your possession, I should say. And again, I understand that. We all understand that. But again, if you have a roster as massive as what Tony Khan has between both companies, then you do have justification. And the one thing I believe Tony Khan is trying to do, and maybe it's just me, but I think what he's trying to do, basically, is he's trying, to give everybody an opportunity at all these titles. He's trying to make sure these titles don't mean anything lesser than what they are. And of course, obviously people are hoping that the next championship, if not the final championship be introduced on the AEW side of things, is trios. And I know some people might say, oh, here we go again, more bloated championships under the regime of AEW, and Tony Khan. Here we go again. When is it not going to end? But again, just like with the All-Atlantic title and all the other AEW titles and Ring of Honor titles, if the day comes that we do indeed get trios titles, six-man titles, if you will, again, the justification is there. As long as you have a roster that can justify, the existence of all these championships, then there's not a problem. Especially if you plan out exactly, who you want to hold these belts for what time, and what wrestlers, what teams, six-man teams, trio teams, do you want to compete for them, on a daily basis. On a daily basis, but on a weekly, if not somewhat daily basis. If you plan it all out, like, okay, everybody's going to get a shot, but these are going to be like my certain teams, my certain, wrestlers and all that, men and women, that I'm going to, basically push to the forefront as, being, the faces when it comes, the main faces, the main people that will go after, if not hold these championships. If you have that all planned out, then again, along with the massive roster of other talents that will get a shot at them, may not win them immediately, but will get a shot at them, it's all, like I said, it's all justified. I mean, if Tony Khan decides, tomorrow night, or not tomorrow night, but this Wednesday, if Tony Khan decides this Wednesday of the day I'm recording it, again, you're going to see this a week from this Wednesday, but if he was to decide, this Wednesday, the week prior to you watching this, if he decides, hey, I want to come out and I want to announce the, debut of the long-awaited six-man trio titles, or I want to make the announcement of, women's tag titles. If he wanted to do that tonight, the week prior to when you're watching this, or even the night, or even the night of the day you're watching this, which will be the 29th, if he decides to do that and say, hey, I want to make the announcement of we're going to introduce 2 more championships. We're going to introduce trios titles, and we're going to introduce women's tag titles. You know, he would be justified in making those announcements. He would. He would be justified in doing it. And like I said, I know some people may not like that, but if he's got the roster, to do it, then I say go for it. You know, a lot of people say that the one thing that's, you know, holding WWE down is not just the lack of talent that they have or anything like that, roster-wise. It's, you know, they have so many championships and the roster not to justify it. And that they believe one of the things they could fix it is to take away some of these championships to justify the roster you have. And that's probably true. And maybe under this interim leadership of Stephanie McMahon, they may do that. We don't know. You know, they may do that. The thing that I'm trying to point out here is this. You know, people can go back and forth on how they feel about AEW having all these championships under the belt. You know, and again, you have that old school hardcore pack of fans that, like I said, they look at AEW, you know, places like AEW, New Japan, MLW, you know, AAA, Impact, and all that as being their jam when it comes to pro wrestling, keeping it alive. But the reason they're also looked at and referred to as old school fans is even though those companies, as I mentioned earlier, are their jam, they'd rather have those companies be limited when it comes to the titles. So that even though it's only, you know, like 4 or 5 titles, and you have a massive roster, to them, it makes the titles more meaningful. Because now now everybody in story, in competitive wise, will want to crack at all those titles. Because there's not that many. But again, even though those are good ideas, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they aren't. Even though there's a good mindset and good idea to go with. The thing is, if Tony Khan feels that right now he's got the roster between both companies that he owns to justify having these many titles and maybe potentially introduce more titles in the future like trios or women's tag, then he's going to do it. He's going to do it until his roster winds up thin, and then Tony Khan, either he'll continue pushing all these titles, or he might do the right thing and say, hey, I don't got the roster, so I gotta shelve some of these titles for the time being. You know, that might be what it takes for him to stop, you know, introducing so many titles. But again, as many people have tried to say, if you feel you're justified with the roster that you have to have all these championships, you know, be in existence, then so be it. I mean, let's take a look at the UFC. Because obviously that's what he's taking the inspiration from. UFC and boxing. We don't know what the roster size overall of UFC is under Dana White's watch. But obviously it's enough for him to have so many championships, you know, within, you know, certain divisions and for certain genders. Same with boxing. You know, we don't know what the overall roster size is for WBO, WBA, and all them. IBF, you know, and all that. We don't know. But we know obviously it's big enough to justify them having all these other championships in different divisions. The point is, if your roster is big enough, and you, the promoter, the owner, feel, hey, I'm justified in having all these titles for the roster that I have, then, you know, why limit yourself? Why limit yourself? So right now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm with a lot of people like Alex Six, just Alex, and Solomon and all them, and JD, that feels like, hey, if he's got the roster to do it, you know, he shouldn't limit himself. And I'm all for that. If Tony Khan has the roster to justify having all these titles and maybe introduce some more down the line, I'm all for it. I really am. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Super thanks will be on after the premiere, so you can help donate that way. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree with some of the old school hardcore fans that companies like AEW, Impact, MLW, Japan, New Japan, and all that, should limit limit the amount of championships they have so that everybody has a shot and tries to make them more important? Or do you think all these companies are justified, like a lot of other hardcore fans and supporters are of these promotions, in having this many championships, under the roofs? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Love to hear from each and every one of you. And until then, guys, I got to get ready to go into my store to start working. And I am out.